Okay, so hi guys, I am Nick. This is my first video. I'm trying to make a little bit of a foray into the MMA content space. I'm going to do a little bit of a mission statement here, let you guys know what I'm going to try and do with this channel. I'm going to give you my reaction to the fights from the Dana White Contender Series last night. I'm going to give you my predictions for the UFC Fight Night card this week. And I'm just going to bullshit a little, let you guys try to get to know a little something about me here. So, before I do that, I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out to the people who kind of inspired me to make this channel and to try and get into this space. Jesse on Fire, his channel, I'm definitely into. We Want Picks, those guys, Angelo and Jacob over there, they're good guys, very entertaining, pretty good picks. Not great, and well, Angelo's been struggling a little bit. Jacob's been pretty good. MMA Guru, I definitely dig him. I think he's got some cool opinions on stuff. Red Pill MMA, he's a good guy. I like his stuff. I'm definitely digging his channel. The legend, Chael Sonnen, Sean O'Malley, I watch some of his content. Michael Bisbing and Anthony Smith with the Believe You Me podcast, and the OG Joe Rogan. So I think those are the real inspirations for this channel. That's the kind of stuff I'm going to try and do with this. I'm going to try and, a little something different. I have a bit of a background with boxing. I'm from the street that Boardwalk Hall is on in Atlantic City. So I've been going to fights all my life. I went to a lot of Arturo Gatti fights, a lot of Bernard Hopkins fights, Floyd Mayweather, you name it. I'm a huge boxing fan. I'm a boxing almanac. I can go all the way back to the Jack Johnson days, the first black heavyweight champion in the 1800s, and John L. Sullivan, the first bare knuckle champion. I'm well versed like that, and I go back that far. I actually got a chance to meet Burt Sugar, the boxing writer, and talk boxing with him, and even he told me I know my shit. So, I'm definitely well versed on boxing, and I'm going to try and bring some of that to this channel as well as MMA. It's not going to be just MMA. You're going to get some kickboxing in there, some Muay Thai, some submission grappling. Most of that stuff's going to come from the ONE FC cards. But yeah, I'm going to try and do a little bit of everything. So I'm going to do a little bit of a mission statement here. I just want to do something different. There's this misnomer that the UFC is up here and everyone else is down here, and if you're not in the UFC, you're not really doing anything. That's bullshit. ONE FC is the biggest martial arts promotion in the world. The ratings they do in Singapore are like what the Super Bowl does over here. I mean, this idea that the UFC is it is not true. Don't get me wrong, the UFC is the dominant promotion, and that is where most of the talent is. I'd be stupid to argue the point that that's not true, but there's a lot of talent elsewhere. I'm actually of the opinion that the champions in Bellator would beat the champions in the UFC for the most part. With the exception of heavyweight, we know John Jones would absolutely smoke Ryan Bader. But Vladim Nemkov at light heavyweight, I think beat the last four light heavyweight champions in the UFC. Blachowicz, Teixeira, Prohaska, Jamal Hill. I think he can beat all of them. At the very least, he's certainly on the level with them. Then at middleweight, I think Johnny Evelyn probably dominates Sean Strickland. He could have dominated Israel Adesanya, who we all see probably a little bit overrated now. I am of the opinion that he does deserve an immediate rematch, which I know isn't a popular opinion, but he did have a great run at middleweight, and he was a two-time champion, and he did defend the belt a lot. I do think you give him another shot. I hear people saying he shouldn't get infinite title shots, and he's lost two out of his last three, and this, that, and the third. I understand that, but he is the biggest draw in the division, and I would give him the rematch. Now, if he gets smoked, he's got to go to the back of the pack. But I just feel like you do give him one more shot, and I think they are going to. But I digress. At welterweight, I think Amosov would actually give Leon Edwards a lot of problems. So I feel like, Bellator can hang, definitely. Usman Nurmagomedov trains with Makhachev, the lightweight champions in Bellator and UFC. I'm a toss-up. I would have to really do a deep breakdown to pick one there. I might go with Nurmagomedov, to be honest with you. At featherweight, obviously, Patricio Pitbull's kind of fallen on hard times and lost the fight over in Rising and lost to Sergio Pettis when he tried to go down to bantamweight and become a three-weight champion. So Volkanovski, the best fighter in the world, would tune him up, obviously. But at bantamweight, Sergio Pettis and Patchy Mix, the interim champion, they are definitely on the level with everybody in the UFC at the top notch. I feel like Patchy Mix might be the best 135-pounder in the world. That kid is a beast. He is a grappling wizard. And then you go to the women's side of things. Chris Cyborg is clearly the best 145-pound woman in the world. There's no doubt about that. And then at 125, yeah, obviously Grasso and Shevchenko are above Liz Carmouche. But as a whole, I believe that Bellator's champions and top level talent is definitely on the level with the UFC's. ONE FC, their top level talent is definitely on the level with the UFC. So the vibe that everyone has that these promotions are the minor leagues and the UFC is the big leagues, it's kind of bullshit. I got to be honest with you. So I digress about that. I'm going to briefly touch on the Shevchenko Grasso scoring. That judge should be fired. You cannot score that round 10-8. Scoring the fifth round, scoring any round in that fight 10-8 was absolutely ridiculous. You cannot score. You could call Grasso the winner, and I would have taken that on the chin, but you can't score around 10-8 in that fight. Every single round was relatively close. Not one of those rounds was a 10-8 round. That guy needs to be fired. They need to get rid of him. It's just not right. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I just had to get that in real quick, guys. I'm going to get into my reaction to the Dana White Contender Series fights. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, so the first fight they had was Igor Da Silva against Jonta Silva. Igor Da Silva, the 20-year-old, is an absolute stud. If they do the right thing by that kid, they could absolutely make it happen for him. He could be a real fighter. I want to say something. I'm not trying to just take shots in this whole video, but the matchmaking in the UFC needs to be improved. The way they throw these kids to the wolves is absolutely ridiculous. Look at what they did to Sage Northcutt. I can't think. Raul Rojas, they threw him in over his head with that second fight. The way they throw these young kids to the wolves over there, you gotta bring them along slow. I don't understand that, and I hate the way that they throw old legends to the wolves. They should go to jail for throwing B.J. Penn in the ring with Yair Rodriguez. That was ridiculous. The way they did Vitor Belfort at the end of his career, throwing him in to get his head kicked in against Gastelum. The way they did Bisbing, throwing him to get his head kicked in by Gastelum. I don't understand it. Anderson Silva, the way they do these legends at the end, Shogun Rua, they send them in there to get massacred to let these young kids build a name. Why not do them right? Send them out the right way. I just don't understand it. So I feel like someone should say something about that. I'm probably going to make a more in-depth video about that, but I definitely feel like they need to work on that. But yeah, getting back to what I was saying, Igor Da Silva, definitely a prospect to watch. At 20 years old, he was the Jungle Fight champion, which is the #1 promotion in Brazil. He's a real guy. He was very impressive. I'm extremely impressed with that kid. Next was the Dylan Montello against Kanan, and I'll pay you if you can pronounce that last name. Uh, Krushewitz, I can't, I have no idea, but Kanan's a real guy. He came in, he got the finish over Montello, who was a Serra-Longo prospect. Coming in, I do a little bit of research on the guys and look them up on Tapology and watch some of their fights on YouTube. And I saw that Kanan had a win over Adriano Martins, the only guy to beat Makhachev, the guy that cold cocked and knocked out Islam Makhachev. So I knew he could fight just based on that. But I was impressed. He was a little bit stiff on the feet, but he definitely had top notch striking. And as soon as he got the back, it was over. So he's dangerous everywhere the fight goes. He's a real guy coming into the UFC at lightweight. He can definitely make waves. Next was the women's fight, Stephanie Luciano and Talita Alencar. I would have signed them both. It was a draw. They signed Luciano. The girl they didn't sign was a 32-year-old five-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. She definitely had some cardio issues, gassed in the third round, but she was definitely world class on the ground. I would have signed her or at least brought her back for another Contender Series fight because she did clearly win the first two rounds. Stephanie Luciano, they did sign, 23 years old, definitely had that dog in her, had the striking on the feet. I like her. She's a serious prospect. I felt like this was one of the best weeks of Dana White's Contender Series as far as the amount of fighters I think that can really make it in the UFC. I don't necessarily feel that every week, but this week I felt like they really did have some guys out there. Dan Allen versus Jacoby Jones was the next fight, was the only upset of the night. Plus 200 underdog cash. Dan Allen looked pretty good doing it. I don't think he's UFC ready. They didn't sign him. He's only in it. That was his fifth fight last night. I think he definitely needs a little more seasoning, some time on the regional promotion. But I think eventually maybe he could make it. And I think Jacoby Jones could eventually make it. They just need more time outside of the UFC fighting and building up their records and experience. But they both had skills. Allen particularly looked good on the feet. I like the kid, but he's not ready just yet. Then in the main event, Shamil Gazov and Greg Velasco. Shamil was the real deal. He's a real prospect. Coming in, he had just beaten Darko Stoic, the UFC light heavyweight that's now fighting in another promotion. He got dropped in that fight. He got clipped, but got up and finished Darko. And I knew coming in off that he had beaten someone with UFC experience. So that and the fact that he was a minus 650 favorite, he kind of knew that he was going to win. But he came in, he looked good. He threw one punch, dropped Velasco, got on top, had a little bit of a tough time securing top position, but once he did, he finished the fight pretty quick, and he's the real deal. 11-0. I think with a little bit more conditioning, a little bit more work in the gym, he could really make a run in the heavyweight division. I actually believe in that guy. So, moving on. We're going to do our predictions for the fight night card coming up. Just bear with me 1 second, guys. All right. So starting off, we have Tamirez Vidal and Montserrat Rendon. I think this is a pretty obvious play for Vidal. Women's MMA is hard to bet. I'm going to be honest, guys. There's upsets. I feel like more upsets in women's MMA than in men's. I think it's harder to predict, harder to bet. There's so much less to go on. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, but I feel like Vidal's a pretty safe play. I got her in a ton of parlays. I got her in a lot of stuff. So I feel like that's a safe play. Rendon's 5-0, but I feel like her last three fights could probably go the other way. I feel like the Brittany Cloudy fight was an absolute robbery. I feel like the fight she had against Zamora, she could have lost. She had another split decision before that. She could be 2-3, to be completely honest with you. And Vidal, even though she had a fight with Aline Perez that she won by disqualification and she was getting beat up, she never quit in that fight. She showed she had that dog, and she's on a run now. She's finished a couple fighters in a row, had a flying knee knockout to the body in her last fight. I feel like she has at least one fight in the UFC that she's got that experience. The other girl might be a little, starstruck coming in. I like Vidal. I feel like that's a pretty safe bet. I got her in a bunch of shit, I told you guys. So next fight, Mizuki Inoue and Hannah Goldie. I got to go Inoue all day. She's a minus 300 favorite, so it's not like I'm, inventing the wheel here or anything, guys. But I feel like that's a safe play, too. She had a split decision loss to Verna Janarova in Invicta and a split decision loss to Karolina Kowalkiewicz that could have very easily gone her way. She fought Alexa Grasso over there, had a fight of the night with her that she did very well in. When that fight ended, she had Grasso mounted and was pounding on her. So that was a 29-28 card, the decision that could have very easily gone to her. So she's hung with the top fighters in the world. I think she comes in and absolutely smokes Hannah Goldie. Hannah Goldie is doing this OnlyFans thing now. She got cold cocked and knocked out by Molly McCann. That loss has not aged well. She's coming off a knockout loss. In a way, she's coming off a 3-year layoff because she tore her ACL. But she's still only 29 years old. I feel like she's super talented. She can do it all. She won a title in a major promotion at 16. So, which is the record. That's the youngest woman ever to win a title in a major promotion. I feel like she's an obvious play. Moving on, we got Muhammad Usman and Jake Collier. This is one that I'm going to say is tough to pick. I didn't go with many underdogs on this card, but I almost went with Collier here, but I can't. I just can't. I got to go with Usman. Jake Collier's cardio has looked so bad in the last couple fights. He was absolutely teeing off on Chris Barnett, gassed in the second round, got knocked out, was absolutely dominating Martin Buday in the first round, gassed and lost the second and third rounds. He's a blown up middleweight who just doesn't want to cut weight, and I just can't trust him with my money. Muhammad Usman's kind of a bum, but at least I know he's going to come in shape. His brother's obviously Kamaru Usman. He's got that kind of backing. I feel like the machine of the UFC's behind him. He's 2-0 with the promotion. He won the Ultimate Fighter. He's got some momentum. He's the guy they want to win. And believe me, they want certain fighters to win. They play this whole act that, oh, whatever happens, happens, and we just deal with it. No, they care. Believe me, they wanted Sean O'Malley to beat Aljamain Sterling. They made him turn around and cut weight quick. They made him come in off his fight with Cejudo quickly. They tried to make that happen. They wanted Israel Adesanya to win against Strickland. They tried to stack the deck against him. They made him go, to another continent and travel and do all of that. Believe me, they have a horse in the race and they want certain things to happen. And I believe they want Muhammad Usman to win. And even though he's, very limited, he does have power, he does have the wrestling. He did beat Junior Taffa in his last fight, despite only landing 7 significant strikes. He won a decision, while only landing 7 significant strikes. That's crazy. Now, he landed like 90 total strikes. He got on top and landed some little shots, used his wrestling. But, that's not very impressive. But still, I got to go with Muhammad Usman, just based on the fact that I know he's going to come in shape and he can at least go the 3 rounds. Next, we got Tim Means and Andre Fialho. This is one of my 2 underdogs that I actually like on this card. I got to go with the Dirty Bird, Tim Means. He's 39 years old. He's coming in off a couple losses in a row, but so is Fialho. And the difference is Fialho's coming in off of 3 knockouts in a row, brutal knockouts. Tim Means was winning his last fight against Alex Morono, doing very well in the first round, using the hands, getting the takedowns in, and then he got caught in a guillotine by a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Shit happens. The fight before that, he lost a split decision to Max Griffin, which was very competitive. He was in that fight. He got dropped. He got back up, made it competitive. He's only really ever been knocked out once in his entire career, Tim Means. I believe he's got 2 KOs on his record, but I think one of them was an injury. Whereas Fialho's coming in off of multiple knockouts in a row. Knocked out by Muslim Salikov, knocked out by Jake Matthews. I can't remember the other guy who knocked him out, but he's coming in off of 3 straight knockout losses. I just feel like Tim Means, even at 39, has got more left in the tank, actually cares. I don't know that Fialho does anymore. Joaquin Buckley, that was the other guy who knocked out Fialho in his last fight. And that was a brutal knockout. I feel like he's just shop worn. Tim's got a little bit more left in the tank. The Dirty Bird flies. That's one of my 2 dogs that I'm going to go with this weekend. Next, we got Jacob Malkoun and Cody Brundage. I think this is a pretty easy play with Jacob Malkoun. I mean, safest play of the card, biggest favorite of the card. Cody Brundage's fight IQ has been absolutely pathetic. He came in against Cedric Dumas, thought he was going to dominate. Very clearly, early on, he lost his confidence, got dominated in the grappling department by a guy who can't grapple. How can I trust him against Jacob Malkoun? Now, Jacob Malkoun did get flatlined in 18 seconds by Phil Hawes, and Cody Brundage can crack, and it is MMA, and things do happen, but I feel like Malkoun's a safe play. I'm not going to beat a dead horse and, talk about this too much. Next is Dan Arguedo against Miles Johns. I love Arguedo. I feel like his wrestling, he's just going to set a pace that Miles John can't keep. Miles John slows down as the fight goes. He's got some power in the hands, but I just feel like Arguedo is way too much in the grappling department. Johns can grapple too, but not the way Arguedo can. He came out and was out grappling Ronnie Lawrence, who's a hell of a grappler, and that really impressed me. I had picked Ronnie Lawrence. I had him in all kinds of DraftKings lineups, everything like that. But even though the fight ended in a no contest because of some bad refereeing, I feel like Arguedo made a point in that fight, and he certainly got me backing him in this fight. Next, we got Ricardo Ramos and Charles Jourdain. I gotta go with Jourdain. I feel like he's just more of a dog. Ramos doesn't throw enough punches for me. I'm gonna get the stats up real quick. Just bear with me 1 second, guys. I know this isn't the most professional, taking my time here, but I'm trying to do a good job for you guys. In his last 10 fights, I believe, I don't think Ricardo Ramos has landed 100 total strikes in any fight. I'm getting the numbers up right now. That's not significant strikes. That's total strikes, guys. He is not a very active guy. And if nothing else, Charles Jourdain is active. You know he's going to bring you activity and intensity and everything like that. So I got to go with Charles Jourdain for that reason. I feel like he's got the dog. He's been in the wars with the Shane Burgos, which I felt like he deserved that decision. Josh Cooleybow, the draw, I felt like that could have gone his way. Lost a split decision to Andre Feely that I feel like could have gone his way. He's been the victim of some bad decisions, I feel like. Yeah, Ricardo Ramos has never landed more than 68 significant strikes in a fight in the UFC. He's got 10 fights in the UFC. He's never landed more than 68 significant strikes and never landed more than 71 total strikes in a fight. That you can't have that. To be honest, whoever's doing the matchmaking really likes this guy because he's had it pretty easy. The only fighters that he's really stepped up and fought were Lerone Murphy, who flatlined him, Said Nurmagomedov, who flatlined him. Bill Algeo was a nice win that he got where he worked in some wrestling, got 8 takedowns and won that fight. But aside from that, Dennis Kang by split decision, I'm just not impressed. Whereas Jourdain has gone through an absolute murderer's row since he's been in the UFC. He's been fighting just absolute killers. Nathaniel Wood, Shane Burgos, Josh Cooleybow, Doo-Ho Choi, Andre Feely, Julian Erosa when he was on a run, Lando Venata, and Chrome Gracie, who can submit you. So I gotta say that I like Charles Jourdain here. If I'm a little bit stuttery, guys, I'm sorry. It's my first video. I will get more comfortable. The content will get better. I promise you, bear with me. I'll get a little bit more witty. You'll get more personality out of me. I'm trying to, get through this first video and just, it is what it is, guys. But just bear with me, please. Next, we got Brian Battle and AJ Fletcher. Now, I think this is one of the closest fights. This was one of the hardest to predict because you don't know what's going to happen here. If it stays on the feet, it's one thing. But if AJ Fletcher comes out and shoots takedowns and gets on top of Brian Battle, I feel like he could win that way. But I don't know if the fight plays out like that. I'm going to go with Brian Battle, but it's a 51-49 kind of lean, you know what I mean? I did put some bets in on him, but looking back on it, I'm not very confident in that pick. I am going to go with Brian Battle, but very, very low confidence. Next up, Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Wooderson. This is a rematch. Wooderson's on a 3-fight losing streak. Marina's on a 2-fight losing streak. Wooderson did get robbed against Pinheiro in her last fight. She definitely should have won that fight. And I think the UFC realizes that. That's why they gave her this fight. But I don't think this is going to go any differently. This was this is a 3-round fight. Their first fight was a 5-round fight. I think this actually favors Marina Rodriguez at only being 3 rounds. I think Wooderson's cardio is one of the only things that she has as far as being on the level with Rodriguez. Rodriguez has the power, the striking, all of that. Wooderson definitely has a wrestling advantage, but I don't think you can trust her to come out and just shoot double legs. I don't, that's not her. So I don't think she can get it done. I just like Marina Rodriguez at minus 300. I feel like she's safe money. She's safe to parlay. I got her in a ton of bets. I feel pretty good about it. Next, Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige in the co-main event. Now this is a highly competitive fight, but I do have to go with Bryce Mitchell. Dan Ige, every time he stepped up against Movar, against the Korean Zombie, against Josh Emmett, against Kelvin Cater, he's lost. His best win is against Edison Barboza, and that was the robbery. I didn't agree with that. I thought that was an absolute robbery. I believe Barboza won that fight. He clearly won the first 2 rounds to me. I'm not sure Dan Ige beat Bektik. I think that could have gone against him. So I think he's kind of lucky to get a lot of wins that he's gotten. He is on a 2-fight win streak, wins over Nate Landwehr and Damon Jackson that were very impressive. But I don't think he's on Bryce Mitchell's level. I think Bryce Mitchell will just wet blanket him. I think he'll be all over him with the grappling. I think he's just got way, way too much for him. Bryce Mitchell, way better resume. Look at the way he did Edison Barboza as compared to what Dan Ige did. Now, obviously, that doesn't translate. Every fight's different. Styles make fights. But I think Bryce Mitchell is just, if his personal life doesn't interfere, because I know he's been struggling in his personal life lately, if he can get his head together and come in and give his best effort, I believe he smokes Dan Ige. Maybe even a submission victory. Dan Ige's never been finished, but I think Bryce can get his back and maybe choke him out. It's possible, if not a dominant win. I mean, obviously, we know Bryce Mitchell's not going to knock anybody out on the feet, but I do think he can get his back and possibly finish Dan Ige. It can be highly competitive if Dan can stuff the shots and keep it on the feet. Then he can definitely tune up Bryce Mitchell, but I just don't see it happening. In the main event, Gamrot and Fiziev, this is my other underdog pick. I like Gamrot. I think that everybody I've tuned into, we want picks. Everybody's picking in Fiziev, and I just don't see it. I don't understand why. I feel like Gamrot's got the 5-round experience. This is, I believe, the 6th or 7th 5-round fight overall. He's been the full 25 minutes 3 times before. Been to the championship rounds at least 4 times, I believe. Fiziev's never been a full 25. He's only been to championship rounds once against RDA. He fought 18 seconds of a 5th round and then finished him. And he slows down in fights. If you go back and watch the Bobby Green fight, Fiziev slowed down in that 3rd round and was getting tuned up. I thought he lost that fight. Against Justin Gaethje in the 3rd round, Fiziev slowed down, got beat up. I just don't see him having the gas tank to keep it up. And all the shots from Gamrot, all the takedowns, all the control on the ground, I think it's just going to be way too much. I don't think this is going to be competitive after the 2nd round. If Gamrot can make it through the first 2 and not get stopped, I think he can dominate the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, maybe even get a stoppage. Now, in that first 10 minutes, Fiziev absolutely has a chance to, get him out of there and get it done. But the longer the fight goes, the more it plays into Gamrot's favor, I believe. he's had the much stronger strength of schedule. He's been in there with killers like Jalen Turner and Arman Sarukian and all types of killers even before he got to the UFC. Whereas Fiziev really has only had a couple of really tough competitors, and they've arguably beat him. Gaethje did beat him. Bobby Green arguably beat him. An old RDA is kind of like his best win, really, and I don't see it. People forget Fiziev got knocked out in his first UFC fight. We've seen him stop before. Gamrot's never been stopped. I just, I feel like Gamrot's the guy here. I feel like he's the play. I got him in a couple bets, a couple parlays. I feel like he's good money here. So that's my end of the picks for the UFC card. I am going to do another video later and give you guys my picks for the Bellator card, the Ryzen card, the ONE FC card. I'm going to do all of them. There are a ton of fights this weekend. And I want to put some shine on these other organizations. They got such high level fighters that don't get coverage from the MMA media. I want to really make that my calling card. I want to be the guy who covers Bellator heavily, covers ONE FC heavily, covers the PFL, Ryzen, KSW, Cage Warriors. The level of talent in those promotions that isn't getting covered is ridiculous. Invicta FC, 90% of, maybe not 90, but 75% of the fighters in the UFC female fighters came from Invicta. Invicta is a female-only promotion that gets no love. That I just don't see why. They are where the UFC gets all of their fighters. I could give you a brief list of some of the Invicta FC fighters that have come over to the UFC, and it's ridiculous. Chris Cyborg, Alexa Grasso, Claudia Gadelha, Aaron Blanchfield, Tracy Cortez, Rose Namajunas, Tracy Tisha Torres, Angela Hill, Mizuki Inoue, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Verna Janarova, Megan Anderson. The list goes on and on. I mean, it's incredible. The fact that they don't get any coverage from the MMA media is absolutely fucking crazy. I don't get it. So I'm going to try and bring some coverage to them. I'm going to give you some boxing predictions. We're going to do a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about, GOATs in different weight classes, all types of stuff. I'm going to try and make this channel something. This was my first video, guys. If I seem nervous, I'm sorry. But it will get better. The product will get better. My picks are going to be good. I feel pretty confident about them this week. I feel like they're good money, guys. And I'm going to do something a little different that you don't see any of these other channels do. I'm going to keep track of my picks as far as my percents, my wins and losses, underdogs and favorites, and keep them posted every week so you guys actually know what percent I'm picking. A lot of other people don't do that, so I'm going to do that for you. And I'm going to start making videos every day. I'm going to do my reactions, I'm going to do my predictions, and we're going to have fun. We're going to do this thing. So until next time, have good mosh pitting. Just remember, sex makes babies. And all right, peace out, guys.